Welcome to Energy Espresso, the podcast that's brewing bold conversations and powerful insights. Dave Bosco is your guide to energizing ideas and electrifying discussions on all things energy and power. Each episode will perk up your perspective as we sit down with industry leaders and experts who are shaping the future over a great cup of coffee. So grab your favorite blend, settle in, and get ready to stay fully charged. This is Energy Espresso. Let's get brewing.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining this week's episode of the Energy Espresso. I'm your host, Dave Bosco, and very excited to have a special guest with me this week, a gentleman named Del. Del, appreciate you joining the EP.
Oh, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Pleasure. So we were chatting. You recently, on Tuesday, got into Houston, flew in from Baltimore, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Nice. Well, I hope the weather's a little bit cooler in Baltimore right now.
It has been unseasonably cool in Baltimore, so much so that some of the trees have actually started to show color, which is really unusual because typically August and early September for us are not unlike Houston, even from a humidity perspective, but this year has been unusual.
That's awesome. Well, I wish you would have put some of that in your carry-on bag and brought it here.
I did, but it leaked out. Then.
Oh, physics. I wanted to defeat it so bad. Well, awesome. Well, Del, we're going to get into your personal journey and also learning about your company, VIOTAS. But this being the Energy Espresso, want to kick off the conversation and get it energized with a cup of coffee. So here at the Upright Studios, we're at the Upright Studio in the Heights. They've got an espresso machine. And Del and I were talking about, folks, kind of some unique differences between espresso roast and blonde roast. So what we've got today is a Nespresso blonde roast coffee. So let's have a sip and let me know what your thoughts are, Del.
It's smooth. It's mild. It's a nice roast.
I'm not going to go into the nuance and bore everybody with the difference between espresso roast and blonde roast, but if you haven't tried a blonde roast coffee, folks, I highly recommend it. Getting up there in age, I've started to have challenges with the bitterness on certain types of coffee, give me acid reflux.
Yeah.
And the blonde roast, I'm getting any of that. So, all right, now that we got the conversation energized, Del, why don't you introduce yourself, let the listeners know who you are and a little bit about your company.
Sure, absolutely. So I have an interesting path into energy. So I like to tell people I'm a recovering IT guy. I started working at Constellation Energy in 1998, supporting the trading floor in Baltimore. And we were partnered with Goldman Sachs at the time in that operation. And our primary focus, and this was every quarterly meeting, was to be the number 2 energy company in America because we'd never be as big as Enron. Okay. So our goal was to be number 2, and we did that for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden we were the number 1 energy company in America. So that was my introduction to the deregulated energy space. Was supporting the trading floor at Constellation. Did several projects for the trading floor, and after that for the company, built a couple data centers. For the company, a lot of project management. And then Constellation decided to stand up a demand-side management company. So we were essentially a startup within a Fortune 100 company. So it was a hugely unique experience, and it was an awesome experience, being part of a startup where you didn't have to worry about a paycheck bouncing and having a lot of freedom, to actually create a new business was awesome. And, had some great mentors in that space. Peter Kelly Detweiler, who's a huge advocate and kind of a thought leader in the energy space today, has his own show, I believe. Learned a lot, did a lot supporting that group, essentially as the CTO of that business unit, and then kind of migrated into the business side of it during a very complex sales cycle in the PJM market, and moved into the business and have never looked back. In some form or fashion have been in the energy space since 98 and directly involved in the business side of it since about 08. So that was an awesome experience. Did that for a number of years. And of course, Exelon ended up buying Constellation in, I think, 2012. didn't like the demand side services company, thought it kind of took money out of their generation side of the business, which in fact it did. But somebody's going to do it. So our argument was, let's keep it in-house. They didn't like that idea, so we spun the company out. It's now a company called C-Power, which was recently acquired, of course, by Energy. So I took that opportunity, left Constellation after 17 years, a career in and of itself there. And went to work for myself for a while, doing consulting and some demand side management projects on the side. And that was my first experience of actually working from home full time. And that's when I started drinking coffee. I had never really been a coffee drinker prior to 2015.
Really?
No. And I found that I needed a morning routine, because if I didn't have early morning meetings with customers or clients, I needed something to do, right? And if the kids weren't in school, it was easy to say, oh, well, I'll just wait. And that's just not me.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? I need to regiment myself a little bit and have a little bit of a routine. So making a coffee, and I had an automated coffee pot, and all. I said, no. You get up, you actually measure it out, and and you make the coffee. Just added to that process of getting started for the day. So this is actually pretty hilarious that we're doing the Espresso podcast, because
like that.
Yeah. And so that has stood true. Even, now that school's back in session, I have a high schooler, so we got to get him to school, but can't do that without the coffee.
Yeah.
And it's cool, because my older son, he's in the workspace now, and he has his cup of coffee in the morning, and that's how he sets his day too. So
it's awesome.
It's kind of interesting.
It's good to have those little rituals.
And they're small.
Totally. There's those little things in life. Stop and smell the flowers, and especially as the coffee's brewing, being able to enjoy the aroma coming off of it. And it's there's something special about it.
Oh, for sure. There's something about that smell. Absolutely. It is invigorating for sure. So did my own gig for a while. Did some demand side projects in the residential market, which is kind of unique.
Yep.
And then during the great pandemic of 21, actually went to work for one of my customers, Generac Power Systems, based out of Wisconsin. So spent about 2 years there doing essentially project management, business development for them in the industrial side, commercial side of their offerings. And then I went to a company called R-Power a couple years after that, where we were doing behind-the-meter generation, reliability as a service for large industrials and commercials, data centers, crypto miners, folks like that. And then that company was acquired as part of a portfolio from our capital partners. And I took that opportunity, and I was approached by the good people at VIOTAS to essentially take over and run their American division here in Texas.
Right.
And so I started at VIOTAS back in early June. So I'm still fairly new to the role, about 90 days in. So still coming up to speed, on the company as a whole. We are a global company. And so we're headquartered in Limerick, Ireland. We have business units in Australia and Texas now as well. So it's a demand side management company. We are the market leader in Ireland. We have over 50% of all demand side assets enrolled in the programs are through the VIOTAS product.
Wow,
it is pretty cool. Our CEO started the company in 2013, Patty Finn, and developed some technology and hardware that, it's a real Steve Jobs kind of a story. The first iteration of our hardware was built in his lab, in his house.
Is this a garage story?
It is a garage story.
100%.
It is cool.
That is so.
It is very cool. And we've been building on it ever since then. We have a lot more people working on it today. It's not just Patty anymore.
Yeah.
We have about 110 employees, and 50 of those employees are dedicated either to the data sciences or the IT side of the business. So we actually build our own hardware, and we have developed and we maintain our own optimization software platform as well.
It's very cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique company. In that we have footprints in so many different markets, but we have this core team, in Ireland and in Poland, actually, that support us. So we don't have to worry about things here in the States, like, are we worried about accounting? Are we worried about HR? No, we've got those services. Those are taken care of for us.
Yep.
So we're able to focus completely on our customers,
awesome.
which is huge, right? Because we're all about customer support.
Yeah. You're able to grow the business, not have to worry about the back office.
Yeah. Absolutely. And nobody wants to worry about back office.
No, it just works.
It goes in, it comes out. Everything's fine.
Yes. So, Dale, I want to unpack a couple of those things.
Sure.
For folks that I want to get more into VIOTAS so that we can have people understand, kind of your guys' business strategy, what you do in the market. But to kind of unpack, us in power, we can use a lot of acronyms, right? And demand, DR, demand response, and generation resources, right? A lot of people go generation resources, like what's that? Like that's a generator, the Joe. And you've got the ability to go ahead and connect that to the grid. Can you explain and unpack for everybody what it is that VIOTAS does? Because you guys are Queasy or GBSE, right? And what is Queasy? What are services that you guys provide to customers? And what's your differentiation?
Sure. That's a great question. We do use a lot of acronyms. And, we can sit in meetings, especially with other peers, and it's just an acronym fest. Yes. It really, when you have the new guy in the office or the new gal in the office, it just kind of goes over their head. And they're kind of like, well, what are you talking about?
Where's the cheat sheet?
Exactly. Where's the cheat sheet? We're not engineers, but we pretend to be engineers, and we use lots of acronyms. So, VIOTAS Texas is a level 4 Queasy. So Queasy is an acronym for Qualified Scheduling Entity. And in the ERCOT market, Queasies represent customers and asset and resource owners in the market. So, for example, if you have a business that makes widgets and they consume a megawatt of power, and there are times where they can be flexible and they maybe want to sell some of that power back to the grid or participate in some kind of a demand side program, a Queasy would have to represent them in the market. It cannot represent themselves. The big boys, the mobiles, the Shells, and the people like that of that caliber actually have their own Queasies.
Sure.
Right. So they have their own energy desk, and they're typically a registered Queasy of some level themselves so that they can represent themselves. There are different levels of Queasies. At VIOTAS, we are the highest level of Queasy. We're a level 4 Queasy, which means we can serve all products and all customers, whether it's basic ERS demand response, all the way up to scheduling merchant plants, and battery assets. We have the capability to do all of that. So we're full service Queasy. Not every Queasy is. It's not easy to become a level 4 Queasy.
Sure.
There are a lot of qualifications and a lot of IT infrastructure that's required to actually get qualified through ERCOT, and it's also not cheap.
Yeah.
So the invoices from ERCOT and from the telecom companies are substantial.
Yep.
So there's a lot of effort and time and capital that goes into actually doing that. So it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
But that part is, I think, really important, because when you're talking about, hitting a strike price or participating in a program where you have resources connected to the utility, you can't wait. And folks, for those who may not be super familiar with this process, this is not like Dell and his team calling up a customer and saying, hey guys, we're going to turn on generator number 2 and start serving at this price, right? I'm sorry for that ignorant kind of like picture to paint, Dell, but you guys have, for lack of a better term, a technology stack.
We do.
That goes on top of the generation resources.
Yep.
That your folks manage and engage based upon forward look on a curve, set strike prices. You almost play it like, like the stock market or commodity trading, right?
Yep.
You got puts and takes, and what your, what your price is to get out of bed and connect those assets and serve, generation needs in the market, right?
Exactly. No, that's a really good way to think about it. So yeah, from a technology perspective, we're talking seconds here that matter, right? So to your point, a phone call, or an email isn't always going to be sufficient. Some of the easier programs I had mentioned, ERS, we have a 30-minute window in which, the resource can show up. In those types of environments, a phone call or a text, could suffice.
Sure.
For sure. But when we're talking about either behind the meter generation, that's grid connected, or a merchant style plant, seconds matter, right? Because a lot of times those resources are not just participating in energy markets, but also ancillary markets.
Sure.
And they're fast response programs. So our technology, I had mentioned the first iteration, was created by our founder. We've developed that. We call it VioLink. And it literally, I should have brought one with me. Didn't think about it. Literally think of a high-end SCADA pack with high-speed relays and sub-metering capabilities. And then our software interacts with that, our co-optimization software that we developed. So the hardware is part of that solution, right, where we can do what we call a light touch on generation plant, where we're really not getting into the weeds of any Modbus mappings or designs. We don't have to do that. We can interface, with relays or dry contacts to switchgear directly and have different programs. So it really does a couple things for us. It keeps us out of the programming side of a customer's plant, which could be sometimes great, sometimes messy. Sure. So it keeps us at arm's length from there. It's a light touch. So if something goes wrong, there are only so many things that could be wrong. So pretty easy to fix. But it also gives us that flexibility, right? We don't spend hours and days doing an installation, right? We sit with the customer. We understand what their technology and their plant looks like. Is it natural gas? Is it Tier 4 diesel? Is it battery? Okay. We have a lot of experience dispatching batteries in Ireland as well as generators. Yep. So we've been there, done that. So when we go in, we're not starting from nothing, right? It's just every plant's different. Give us the one lines. Let us talk to your engineer. And more importantly, let us talk to your plant manager.
Yes.
And right, because they typically know where all the skeletons are.
They definitely do.
And we can do an install relatively quickly and painlessly. Some customers ask for more, right? Some customers want a little bit more than just, hey, can you dispatch and recall the unit? Can you monitor it for us? Sure. The answer is yes. Is it our focus? No. We have the ability to do that, with more SCADA-like solutions. Sure. So we have those abilities as well.
But I would imagine your guys' business model is really aligned with the customer making money.
Absolutely.
Right? So you only make money if
Correct.
the customer makes money.
Yep.
So you're highly motivated to ensure those resources are ready to go and, hit that market when that strike happens.
Absolutely.
I think that's really, really special because in today's day and age, right, generation, you hear about it around the dinner table, electricity demand with data centers, industrial loads, oil and gas. Just, it is in the ether right now. But with that being said, there's I think a lot of, queasies or, QSEs out there. It sounds like you guys took more of a homebrew approach to really differentiate yourself. And are there other pieces of like algorithms and more advanced programs that you can kind of serve a customer's needs with outside of just, these traditional kind of like markets that people are maybe not too familiar with, but are there other services that you provide as part of that technology stack too?
Yeah. So our optimization software is really pretty unique. So our goal is to be an active partner with our customers. So I won't say every queasy is the same, but many queasies have a very set and forget kind of mentality where they enroll a customer into program X and they're very comfortable with that and they're on a 2-year contract and we'll talk to you a couple months before your contract's up for renewal and just assume everything is fine. We take a much more active approach. So the ancillary markets and ERCOT are a great example. There are different programs within the ancillary programs, right? There are different services that are offered. Could be non-spin, could be ECRS, could be RRS, right? And there are different programs that have different values. And those values change, right, by hour and by season. We take an active approach so that we can maximize the value for any given resource. So if we have a resource, let's just keep it simple, that's 100 kW, which is the threshold for entering the market. And we put that resource into the ECRS program, which was a relatively new program, was launched in June of 23, made massive amounts of money for battery operators. That summer of 23 had lots of heat. You probably recall that. So it kind of came like the flagship of the ancillary programs, even though it was brand new and everybody wanted to participate in it. That story's changed since then. Doesn't quite have that value anymore, unfortunately. But those values change. And if we have a resource that's qualified for 3 different services, well, let's pick the one that's going to make the most money for the customer for the next hour.
Yep.
Right. Co-optimization software does that. Right. We're able to pull in and pull out a resource into the program based upon what we think that price is going to be for that service. So it's a very active participation in the ancillary sides.
It's really cool.
It is because it obviously makes more money for the customer, right? It does more for the grid from a protection standpoint because, look, there's a reason a service is more valuable. It's because they need it. There's probably a shortage there, right?
Big time.
So let's give the market what they need to keep the grid stable because at the end of the day, that's what this is about, right? Making sure that the lights stay on.
Yep.
And
resiliency.
100%. And by maximizing, of course, the customer's value, we get a management fee from that. So that maximizes the upside for VIOTAS, right? And at the end of the day, this is a business, not a hobby. And that's our goal. And making sure that we are doing the right thing for the customer and for the market is what it's all about. We have a 99% customer retention rate in Australia and in Ireland.
It's impressive.
It's It's hugely impressive, and it puts a lot of pressure on me and the Texas team to make sure that we are doing that good for our customers in Texas. Because the last thing I want to do is go back to my boss and say, well, unfortunately, we only have a 92% customer retention rate.
Yeah.
I don't want to ever deliver that message.
No, and I think, look, there's some nuanced differences from the way that I think businesses operate in other countries versus here in the States. But regardless, the partnership approach, and you're known by the customers and the partners you keep, is like critical to a business, because that turnover, you don't want it. No. It takes a lot to onboard, offboard people. And, it's a lot easier to just stay in touch and kind of not have that cold, hey, contract's coming up. Oh, I know we haven't talked in 2 years. If your kid's grown since then, do you still like pickleball? Exactly. Having that personal touch, even in a business like this where you got a technology stack that manages it.
Yep.
People do business with people at the end of the day. And, things can happen also because problems, they pop up. And it's a lot easier to manage that when you have that close contact and regular engagement to be able to, smooth out and work through things, because it happens in life, right?
It does, whether it's, business or personal. Yeah. Nothing is static, right? One of the things and the challenges that we have in the market today, are the changes, whether they're regulatory mandated maybe by the Senate or whether they're PUC or ERCOT changes. It's not a static environment. So we focus a lot on the regulatory side. We have a great manager of regulatory here, Patrick, that's part of the Texas team. And he spends a lot of time working with ERCOT working groups, RTC plus B. Obviously, is a huge change that's coming to the market this December, specifically impacting the ancillaries.
With SV6.
Yeah. SB6, that's a whole nother topic. And who knows what some of the shape outs are going to be, but they're going to be significant.
We didn't actually see the final documentation to understand like what's in there.
Yeah.
There's like high level details. Sorry to digress, people.
No, you're not.
But
it's a topic. Anytime you're with a bunch of other energy geeks, right? It's one of the things on the list. We talk about it regularly, and some of it is an unknown right now, but we know there are a couple big things. 4CP isn't going to be 4CP anymore. What's it going to be? Is it 12CP? Is it something else? We don't know. We know it's going to change.
Yep.
But we don't know what it looks like.
This is the thing that I believe most people take electricity for granted. Right.
Absolutely.
You go home, you flip the light switch, and you go, works, magic happens. But people don't understand the level of planning, detail, regulatory management in these programs that has to constantly be monitored, be discussed, probably impacts what your guys' algorithms look like.
100%.
Our software stack, right?
100%.
You've probably got people, pining to go ahead and get into the code and update things because December happens and all of a sudden these new programs can be participated in or nuances change. That's a margin enriching opportunity for the folks that are first to strike. That's to be able to serve it, right?
That's right. There certainly is some of that. We've been working on the RTC plus B software since before I started with the company. So certainly early in the spring of this year, and we actually have weekly calls with the IT team. About there's actually testing happening today at ERCOT.
Very cool.
So, we're actually following that closely, right? They're doing side-by-side runs of the legacy environment next to, RTC technology and environment. So they're doing some parallel operations today. So we're really watching that closely to actually see how that's going to play out. Everything thus far is on track for December 5th rollout on the ERCOT side of things. And VIOTAS is ready for that. So we have confidence in our systems, and we know that our customers will be served on day one when those rules change. We're ready to go. Is everybody else ready to go? I assure you the generators on that side are other queasies ready to go? Don't know. Yeah. Hopefully they've been, keeping up with things. ERCOT has been pretty stringent in having people at the queasy level sign off. This is coming. Acknowledge that it's coming. So it's been a big deal for about a year and a half. So it's impactful for sure.
And maybe for people who don't understand some of that nuance, Del, when you guys as a queasy go and sign up with ERCOT, you're putting your brand and your name
absolutely
on the line.
That's
right. And
that's right.
Folks, this is not just like, hey, do I want to participate in this program today? Maybe not. I don't know. You essentially can get penalized if,
absolutely,
there is agreement to participate in the service. You get the strike, and all of a sudden you don't fire up. It's not just your customers not generating revenue and you're not, it's a black eye in your business. Huge. So you got to maintain that, I call it like credibility and integrity in your service, right?
Absolutely. So typically the customer who owns the resource, right, they could be penalized, and typically that could be a suspension. You can't participate for X number of months or something like that. But as the queasy representing that resource, ultimately a lot of that liability does fall on us. So the last thing I ever want to do, as the lead of VIOTAS here in the States, is to have to sit in front of the Texas Public Service Commission and explain to them why these resources didn't show up, or why we missed availability in the ERS program or something similar. That's not something that you want to happen. There are lots of ramifications from that, right? The fines can be absorbent, $50,000, $250,000, not uncommon fines that have been handed down to other queasies from the PUC.
Yeah, depending on how much you have resource-wise, that
absolutely
wipes out all of your upside.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
That's a liability.
Yeah, and obviously it's, it impacts the market as well, because you didn't show up, somebody else had to cover your spot.
Yep.
Right? Was somebody able to cover your spot? Did it cause an imbalance? So it's not a situation you ever want to be in. We take a very conservative approach when we enroll resources into the market. Under promise and overperform has been a motto of mine for a long time. Having worked as long as I did at Constellation, we treated all of our demand side assets just like power plants. That was not cheap to do, especially in the early days. But that was the position we took, because if you're being paid like a generator, you should act like a generator.
1,000%.
Right? If you don't show up, well, what's the point of having you as a resource?
Why are you doing it?
Yeah. Why do it? So we don't take that lightly, and we don't take the responsibility lightly. So we do a lot of diligence when we bring a new resource in. We have a great engineering staff here in Texas, as well as folks who support us back in Ireland, and we do our diligence. Right? We're walking the plants. We have a visit happening today out in Midland. We're walking a facility, and it's an all-day affair, and I'm sure the guy's going to be hot and filthy by the time he's done. But when he leaves the site this evening, we're going to have a really good understanding of what the capabilities are for that facility. What can they actually do? They might think they could do a lot, but in reality, maybe they can't.
Yeah.
So doing that diligence and really looking at the historical usage, looking at their bills, what is their exposure? What is their relationship with their rep in Texas, of course, because people have customer choice here. What is their relationship with the utility? In this case, it's Encore. Are there any agreements we need to know about, right? Are they in other programs? That might be utility specific. So there's a lot of diligence that has to happen. And that diligence has to happen whether it's a 100 kW size customer or 10 megawatts. You just still have to go through the level of effort to make sure that you are signing a customer and a resource that will show up when called to do so.
Details matter.
Details matter. And decimal points matter. Details matter. It all matters.
Definitely does. Something that I think is really interesting, Del, is your guys' experience in Ireland. Ireland over, call the past five to 6 years, there was something happening in Ireland that was foreshadowing what was going to happen here in the United States, right? Because of lots of open land, very friendly to business. Generation resource laws maybe are a little bit different in Ireland. There was a very early adoption, from kind of digressing to data centers and what's happening in the market that you're seeing today. You guys got some experience as VIOTAS with that. Is that giving you some heads up advantage in today's market with what's happening in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to kind of frame this story for folks. So you have Ireland, which of course is an island, and you have Australia, which is a continent but still an island, and then we have an artificial island of energy here in Texas, which is ERCOT, right? Which is purposely isolated.
You guys are into islands. I like it.
We like islands. We're all about islands. Where will we go next? I don't know. Look at the globe, and maybe
Hawaii's not bad.
It's
a generation.
If I could go to Hawaii on a regular basis, we can open an office there. I'm down with that.
We have to work on that.
Yeah, I'll put a note in with my boss. I'm not sure how that would be received, but yeah, Ireland's in a real unique position. Of course, they're it's not Northern Ireland, it's Ireland, so the part of the EU, and I think they have no fossil generation left in Ireland. So we are talking renewables as far as the eye can see. So whether it's solar or lots of wind in Ireland, as you can imagine, and of course the data centers, right? Whether it's AWS or Microsoft, they have a strong presence there. There are tax reasons for that. There are lots of reasons for that, but they've been there for a number of years and they have to be supported. So we are the market leader in the demand side programs in Ireland by far. We have more than 50% of the market in Ireland. Ireland is a different style market than we see here in Texas. It's a capacity market, so much more like PJM.
Yep.
To give it a comparable stateside, it's much more like PJM. So it's a slightly different set of programs, but the fundamentals are the same, right? Ancillary services and demand side services. How can we keep in Ireland? How can we keep frequency at 50 hertz? Right? And how can we make sure that assets show up when they need to show up? So our play in Ireland has been, of course, demand side programs, whether it's, simple demand response programs or whether it's BES integration into the system to support the ancillary programs. We've been doing that since 2013. And that's put us in the position where we've learned a lot because we were there in the early days, right? I like to call the early days of demand response in the States, the wild, wild west of demand response, yep. Right? In Ireland, 2013, was their wild, wild west of demand response. And we entered the market during that time. So we were well positioned to see the changes that were coming and adjust both our business model, but also our technology.
Sure.
Right. So that software stack that I was mentioning, right. Ireland was obviously our first foray, into the energy business. So that software originally was designed to support all the programs in Ireland, whether they're demand response, ancillary, or battery. That's what it's there for. We actually do dispatch natural gas generation in Ireland, not large scale, but typically behind the meter, similar to what we see a lot of here in Texas nowadays. Yep. But it's all about balancing the grid. And when you don't have any fossil base plants that you can rely on, and you have limited interconnections to the UK and maybe France, there's only so much you can import.
Control their destiny.
You have to control their destiny, and we've seen in other areas, Germany, for example, where they shut down all of their nuclear plants. They put themselves in a bad position. They got a little ahead of their supply lines. There's probably another story there about Germans getting ahead of supply lines. But it happens, and they put themselves in a bad spot. Of course, they couldn't have anticipated everything that's happening in Eastern Europe coming to fruition, but they're now dependent on plants in other countries similar to ones that they shut down to support them.
Yep.
Tons of solar in Germany, but just not enough, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Right. And it's, limited gas supplies coming in because of, the issues in Eastern Europe. It's problematic. So Ireland has done a much better job. And I think we have learned from that, certainly here with what we see in Texas, more wind in Texas than I think anywhere else in the United States.
Phenomenal amount.
It's huge, right? Solar, booming. We see, if you look at the ERCOT graphs through the day, when solar drops off, we've moved our peaks, because of renewables here in Texas. And because of consumer behavior as well.
Yep.
So it's been really interesting to see, and we're well suited for that, right? We've been doing it since 2013. Texas is a little different, right? We're an energy only market. We don't have that capacity piece, but that makes it a little more wild, actually, right? There are more things for us to potentially monetize and more opportunities to make customers money because of that.
Yeah, and being a very I would say similar to Ireland, right? Friendly from a business perspective, friendly from a tax and regulation perspective. This is the new frontier. For anybody that wants to connect large loads and to serve, their business and get sequence and speed to market much more quicker than anybody else. I think that's one reason Texas has been experiencing, outside of just, my opinion, being the best state in the union.
It's hard to argue. It's hard to argue.
It's so much easier for somebody to break ground here and go we're going to connect to the grid. However, that is proving to be quite the challenge, right?
Because it is.
You only have so much firmness and generation capacity and resources and ability for, due to limitations with transmission distribution to connect all of those resources to the grid. And with the proliferation of data centers, re-onshoring of industrial manufacturing, oil and gas loads that are going crazy, human beings that are moving and flooding into Texas, it is this very, very, crazy time to live in. It's super exciting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of market opportunity, but what do you see in Dell as like, what's the critical path right now? Because I've got opinions, but would like to hear from you. What are you seeing from, an energy management company, right? That manages people's generation resources to participate in these programs. Should we be scared about what's happening in Texas right now?
Yeah, I would say we should be excited. I wouldn't be scared. We have growing pains, right? And we see that with interconnect queues, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's for the load side or generation side from an interconnection perspective. Texas historically had been one of the best markets from an interconnection perspective with the slowest lead times. You look at states like New York or even the New England states where we're talking 5 and 7 years for generator interconnection. And Texas was always kind of the that bright spot where it was, we can do this in 9 to 12 months typically. Yep. That story has changed, right? Painfully so, right?
Sort of like 18-24.
18 to 24 is realistic, right? Even that first pass, whether it's, Centerpoint or Encore, you're waiting 9 months to get that initial study back in many cases. And then if there's an issue with it, you start that process over again. So it can be very frustrating for developers, right? I've been in that seat, and it's not fun.
Yeah, you don't want stranded capital.
You don't want stranded capital, and when you deal with large entities like Encore, good company, best of intentions, they have rules that they work by that the PUC has set, and they live within those rules, and they can't go outside of them.
Yes,
right. So even if you find the best person there is at Encore, he or she can only do so much to push something along. You're still part of that queue.
They got to live within compliance.
And you have to live with the compliance. We also saw, to your point, lots of people coming here, whether it's the crypto miners or data centers or just other commercial and industrial coming here for tax purposes, right? Yep. Leaving California, leaving other states and setting up shop here. It's impactful, right? And you look at the projections for the demand side growth in the state, ERCOT system alone, they're exponential, right? It's insane. They throttled it back a little bit, but it's still, how are we going to do that? We're at 85 gigawatts today of demand, and we think we're going to be at 120 or something by 2030. It's insane.
The bookends is because you've got highly conservative estimates to that kind of 120, 130 gigawatts. You've got some people going like, could be 300 gigawatts, right? And I go, okay, even if you take the over under on it, or even go on the underside, be a little bit more conservative, still a huge amount of capacity.
It's huge. It's a nation size, yes. Right? We're not talking. This isn't a small RTO. This is a nation size, yes. A power grid. The data centers, of course, obviously they need electricity. Many of them need lots of water as well, which can be problematic here in Texas, especially in West Texas. So it's an interesting time that we're in, and I think what we will see from our perspective is more opportunity, right? Demand side programs become more important, right? We're bringing in all this additional load. We have to have more flexibility on the people who are consuming that load. We see some of that with SB6, right? Mm-hmm. Connected loads over 75 megawatts will have to participate in some kind of a program. Yep. And again, it's this big unknown. We don't know what that program looks like. We don't know who's going to administer it. Is it the utility? Is it the RTO? Is it ERCOT? We don't know, right? But something's
going to be some type of switch.
There's going to be some kind of switch, and if you're AWS or you're Google and you say, well, I want to build a data center here. Well, okay, that's great. What do you connect that? Well, it's going to be 150 megawatts for phase one. Okay, well, outstanding. What are you going to do when we tell you to shut off? What is your solution? Oh, well, we like tier 2 diesel. Well, maybe you shouldn't like tier 2 diesel because natural gas is probably more EPA friendly.
Yep.
Right. And will give you more flexibility to participate in those programs that you are going to be mandated to participate in.
Absolutely.
So how can we monetize that for you? Let's not let it be a stranded asset. Let's make it work for you.
Yep.
Right. Turn this into a positive. Yeah. You're being told to do it, but this can be very advantageous to you. The data center group is a very interesting and dynamic world. The players in the world, you have very regimented folks like Microsoft and AWS who have these are our protocols, these are what we're doing. And then you have the new players, yep. Right, who are private equity backed, right, or just rich people. Yep. Where that, well, there's an opportunity here. How can we strike and build co-locating spaces?
They're very agile.
Very agile.
That's what they're focused on.
And they get frustrated, right? Because, well, you're in the queue and you've got 24 months before you connect. Well, we're just going to throw a generation there. outstanding. Well, make sure you throw the right generation there, because once you're grid connected, you don't want that stranded asset. Make it work for you, right?
And that's where I think a lot of people, with generation resources get super confused, right?
Yeah.
Is you've got the interconnect into the ERCOT market, but you also have to live within the EPA or TCEQ rules.
That's right.
So you can't just say, hey, I'm going to go and buy a bunch of old generation assets from South America that maybe PDVSA, scrapped, and bring them into the United States. You've got to meet current EPA requirements.
That's right.
Are you within a congested area that, you're in non-attainment zone? Now you're getting into Title V.
Yeah.
And just the supply chain piece of this today, Del, is nuts. I mean,
It is.
It's like you almost the wizard, think of Wizard of the Oz, Wizard of Oz, Lions, Tigers, and Bears, oh my, data centers, LNG, and Aero, oh my. It's a crazy time to live in, but this is where, and I appreciate you kind of saying that this is really a market opportunity. A lot of people are nervous though, because, we especially in the United States, agility and just making decision and acting on it is part of our culture. Capitalism and driving like supply and demand. If I've got the capital, I want to spend it. I want to go get to market.
Yeah.
It's a very different world that we're living in. Because you should be in line already for the past 2 years. If you even want to think about getting something by 2028 is where we're at today.
That's right.
And with the data center piece of this, because I'm a recovering IT guy myself, I'm glad that you say that. Technology proliferates very, very quickly because it's all software code, right? And you've got the hardware pieces of this. You think switches, routers, all the other, physical layer stuff that is actually, doing the switching or, doing the compute piece of this. It's mostly software that IT and data center companies really bring value-wise to the table. And they can go through, iterative sprints, in parallel to kind of get minimally viable products out the door.
Yep.
And that frustration on their side is like, what are you guys talking about? Like, we do amazing things in freaking 3 months. And it's like, yeah, but, process, electrical, interconnects, safety studies, emission studies, gas supply, water gives me some concerns for the world.
Yeah. For sure.
But there's just so many pieces that you go like, hey, there's this house of cards, and it feels very, very flimsy in the market right now. But that also creates for folks who had a little bit of, vision going, hey, something is going to happen here, right? And they've gone and secured generation resources. It's a really margin-enriching opportunity for companies.
100%. Yeah, on the hardware side for certain. Back to your earlier comment, though, I mean, the lead times for this hardware, right, whether it's Jenbacher technology or Caterpillar, whoever it might be, are substantial, especially for the larger pieces of iron.
Yes.
So, we see people taking, IPPs taking advantage of pre-ordering, right, and then hoping to find the customer, right, to fill those orders later on. So there's a lot of competition on that side, on the generation side. On the interconnect side, I think part of SB6 was, hey, now you have to pay something, right? You can't just put your name on the list as a holding spot and then bail.
Put some skin in the game.
Put some skin in the game so that we know that you're real, right? Yep. And people are still coming here, right? So it really hasn't, people aren't saying, oh, I'm not going to Texas now because I have to post, 150K.
Yep.
I'm gonna stay in California, or I'm gonna go to Arkansas. We don't hear that happening. People are still coming here. There's a reason people want to be here. The energy market is extraordinarily nimble, right? The first state, I believe, to deregulate in 2000.
Yep.
Right. So we've been doing it longer than anybody else, even longer than California.
Yep.
Right. So it's kind of like, wow, we're kind of on the cutting edge here, and our interconnect queues, 18, 24 months, but go to PJM, go to New England, 7 years, 5 years, 4 years.
Yep.
Even though FERC has said, hey, you need to restructure this, we need to prioritize base power plant and renewables. How are you going to do this? It's a quagmire.
Yeah.
Right. We have the ability, we mentioned before, we are an island, a self-imposed island, that gives us a little bit more flexibility because we don't have some of that federal oversight that other states do and other RTOs do. Yep. So that gives us some flexibility, and people recognize that. But it can be frustrating, especially for the people on the IT side who expect, hey, we want to build this. Why can't you service?
Yep.
Well, this isn't a computer. It's not software. It's grid infrastructure that largely was designed post World War II. It really hasn't changed all that much since then.
I mean, let's be honest. Thomas Edison came back from the dead and showed it.
I know what that is.
Guys, all that has changed here is we got these digital devices
That's right.
in our hands. Information is more readily available, but we have not actually had leaps in technology when it comes to electrical infrastructure. And that's one thing I think people don't appreciate is that there has not been a massive investment from, let's face it, the OEM side. Like they essentially have aged designs that they are just using as a fantastic ATM machine. And good on them.
Absolutely.
But that piece of the technology stack, if we refer to it as that, there needs to be some significant improvements here.
100%. And look, credit to them for building something, in that generation that was resilient as it is.
Yep.
Right. I mean, especially you see it in Texas, certainly on the East Coast, it's even worse. Right. I have driven past substations that clearly, were built in the 40s and are still in operation today.
Yep.
Right. Probably all sorts of terrible chemicals in those transformers and they're humming along.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they do the maintenance and, it's a little prayer and you sign a cross and you walk out and right. Make sure you have your PPP on, as you go through and hope that everything goes well. But when it goes badly, it goes badly quickly. Right? And I've seen some fires, at substations, when I was at Constellation, we owned obviously Baltimore Gas and Electric, dealt with some of that and dealt with technology. I've personally seen technology in use within the past 10 years that was put into place during World War II.
That's crazy.
It's insane. It's insane. And it still works every day.
Yep.
And it's there's a little prayer that's probably said at the bulk power desk. Is it going to stay on? Is it going to stay on? Well, yeah, it's good.
The stress level has to be kind of on par with like air traffic control.
In some markets, I think that's true, especially on a hot summer afternoon where it's been, 95 degrees for 5 days in a row. Yeah, there's definitely, a pucker factor, if we could use that term.
Some anxiety.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And that's no way to live, right? No, I think Texas, is better than that. We've done a good job, I think, as an RTO on the ERCOT side, pulling the utilities together and mandating, right? These are the things that you have to do. This is the minimum level of qualification that we go through. Obviously, there's, the latest and greatest thing, on resiliency side and reliability side is where was your product built? Did it come from a friendly nation, right? There are all sorts of certification processes now, even as a queasy, that we have to go through to attest that we're not buying technology from foreign entities that may have bad ideas, right?
You got backdoors, you got a hardening piece, especially the critical infrastructure.
It's huge. And, if you go back even 5 years, that wasn't necessarily part of the conversation. So we have substations that are quote unquote new because they were built in 2015. But are they viable for interconnection? Because where do those transformers come from? Where does the relays and the protective equipment come from? Okay, well, that's not a country that we're comfortable with at this point. So now we have to do remediation. What kind of firewalls? What kind of solutions have to be put into place? That also, again, restricts the flow of hardware. Now we've limited the number of countries that we can import large transformers from.
Yep, supply chain.
Back to supply chain, right? And we talked about generators before, but, as recently as a couple of years ago, generators were problematic, but switchgear, right, and all that technology was even worse. You couldn't find it. It was like hen's teeth. I need a 4,000 amp ATS. Good luck. You're not going to find one for 18 months.
No.
I lived in that world for a while, and that was stressful. And literally calling people out of the blue, saying, "Is there any chance you have?" and hearing the laughter from the other side of the phone,
and you having to make a decision: do I go to the gray market?
That's right.
Steal something off an asset that I bought because
that's right.
I have to have that to get connected.
Well, I'll say here to pay Paul. Absolutely, absolutely.
It's a crazy market, and I appreciate you bringing up kind of the hardened aspect of this with. A lot of folks, I think, feel and believe that this is just dumb iron, right?
Yeah.
But you've got people monitoring every aspect of this. So this is also interconnected to, wide area networks, the internet, for folks not familiar with some other acronyms here. And, the risk is you can essentially have somebody with these backdoors be a bad actor, connect into that code, remotely access to an IP address, and take down power plants. Now, that's like worst case scenario, but I think that's what everybody's concerned about. And I covered this on an episode of the podcast. It was a couple of months ago. active front ends in solar. Okay. I think it's 50% of all solar panel, well, I mean, the solar panels and the active front ends that were coming to the US were coming from 3 companies.
Yeah.
One company specifically, they've had in the UK, they did some hardening tests and found out there are backdoors in all of these active front ends, as well as all these solar installations that have happened since like 2009, 2010 timeframe. And so this is a really big problem, folks. It's not to be, exaggerating about this. This is like big concerns. You've got these huge loads of human beings' comfort factor that we have living in the United States, and just, going to the house, flipping the light switch and expecting the lights to come on. There are folks who are, bad actors that introduce risk into our market because of, everything is connected to the internet. So I think this is something that I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's something I feel a lot of people don't understand or think is a really big problem.
Agreed. It can be glossed over or just not known about.
Yeah.
Right. To your point. And, it doesn't even have to be as sophisticated as getting into the code, right? We're talking sub-second interaction between a generator and the grid. And if you can interrupt that communication for a blink of an eye,
yep,
right, you can trip that unit offline. And that can lead to cascading events that have impact on the entire market.
Yeah.
So
only needs a DDoS tag and an IP address to clog up the router and say, I can't serve any more information. I got to restart.
That's right. And to your point, it's not just dumb iron in the field now. Storage is cheap. IT is cheap now. We're monitoring everything, every point that you can possibly think of. Where in the past, maybe we did that for nuclear sites. Now, when we have an asset in the field, even if it's, internal combustion engine, data's cheap. They're getting the data. Let's just keep it forever, right? So you have that interaction now. You have a much heavier touch point, between the operators and the asset in the field. So that opens up more pathways, that bad actors could potentially get into. So security is utmost important, on the cyber side, and physical security. Right? A couple of years ago, we saw the surveillance of substations in the Northwest, I believe, where we had some people doing fishy things.
Yeah, guys shooting substation transformers, rifles and blowing them up. I mean, that took out, that was on the East Coast. Is that North Carolina or South Carolina?
There was one in the Carolinas, and I thought there was one in Washington State too, as I recall. And it's terrifying. And it's
your 150 MVA substation transformer isn't just sitting in a yard somewhere.
No.
You need to replace it.
It's not. I mean, you're talking years, right?
Very specialized piece of equipment.
Yeah,
and they're massive.
They're huge. They are huge, and so critical infrastructure is called that for a reason, right? Whether it's physical or cyber, lots of attention is paid to that, and that goes back to resiliency. If something like that happens, what do we do to keep the grid from failing? Right? How do you keep that cascade effect from going? A lot of that is responsibility, obviously, in Texas to ERCOT and the utilities to make sure that they have a plan in place to keep those cascades from falling. But when those situations do happen, right, the demand side participants really will have to do their part too, right? And that means curtailing load, shedding load, and stopping productions to make sure that the grid isn't overtaxed.
Yep.
God forbid those situations occur. It's just a matter of time, whether it's a weather event or some, malicious act.
Yeah.
Something will impact us again.
Something unexpected.
Nobody expected, Winter Storm Uri to have the impact that it did on the state. But it was monumental, right? And it was a watershed moment for the ERCOT market. And a lot of the changes we see today are because of Uri.
Big time. And I know of a couple of companies that made out like bandits.
A couple that don't exist.
So yes, exactly. They had some fantastic foresight.
Yeah.
I hope, obviously, I never want to build a business on the fact that, people are going to suffer and those things are going to happen. But I think this resiliency topic in today's day and age is so much more important because, there was a lot of feeling that went into what are the resources we're going to put into the market. And a lot of that investment happened in solar, wind, battery energy storage from a renewable standpoint. And it left the grid in kind of a precarious spot, especially with, very, high increases in load growth that are happening right now. And so I'm of the opinion, like in all the above technology policy, you think about it like a hybrid solution. That's really what we need, because each one of those different technologies has their own benefit that they bring into the energy space. And you can't just have one flavor. You got to have variety. That's the zest of life.
Yeah.
But it's got to be managed and set up properly to be able to add value. and provide that resiliency. It's
Yeah.
just my 2 cents.
Yeah. I mean, you never want to put all your eggs in one basket, as they say. So yeah, that kind of variety and diversity is certainly needed, right? And look, different people are better at different things. Different companies are better at different things. Different technologies are better at doing some things than others can be.
Yep.
So I think the ERCOT market has been very open, historically to looking at new programs and new solutions to solve their problems, much more open than maybe some of the ISOs in North America. I actually see some of the ISOs elsewhere learning from ERCOT, right? And taking things that ERCOT has done and reshaping them for maybe a capacity market, but in essence, still an ERCOT approach to that. So I think that's one of the things that makes this market very cool. Right? We are a leader. We have been a leader since 2000. We continue to be a leader, right? Even with the growth and the constraints that we have, people are still coming here. People still want to be in Texas. They want to do business here, right? And from our perspective at VIOTAS, we're going to do everything we can do to support the grid so that those people can continue to come here.
Got it.
And supporting the grid, taking care of the customer, right? And making sure that we have a future, right? That's not going to be limited by our ability to serve load is huge. Right now, we need to figure out the water side of things, and we'll be in good shape. But I am hugely optimistic that we are on the right path and doing the right things on the market side, in supporting the grid. The grid is growing, whether it's through organic growth, or additions like Lubbock, Texas, recently joining ERCOT, in the past year.
Yep.
People want to be here. There's a reason for that. We know what we're doing.
Yep.
Right? We do a good job at balancing it. Have we made mistakes as a grid in the past? Absolutely. Have we learned from them? Absolutely.
Fail forward, though.
That's right. Fail forward. God forbid we ever have another storm like Uri. We're in a much better spot, right, to prevent those things from happening. RTC plus B is another great example of a fallout from Uri. That program at the time on the ancillary side, we had resources stranded in ancillary programs. They couldn't participate in the energy market.
Yep.
RTC plus B is changing that, right? So failing forward, absolutely. Doing the right things, hugely important.
Install line heaters on gas lines.
Absolutely.
Keep the molecule flowing.
It's funny. After Uri, I saw a LinkedIn post that I'll assume that it was true, and it was a salesman. He had since retired, but he had sold a lot of the wind farm equipment back in the early 2000s and early 2010s. And he said, "I just want to go on record. I tried to sell the winterization package, and nobody ever bought it." And I said, "Well, hey, I don't doubt that he did."
Yep. No, it's you can't trip over $100 bills, pick up nickels.
That's right.
Investment in these resources and building it properly is so important. Not only from a grid reliability standpoint, but if you're going to make an investment, make sure at any time you can participate and put that resource to use to go ahead and capitalize on it. Right? It's just, I think maybe differently in that case. I'm gonna go and spend a couple $1,000,000. What's another couple $100,000 in a business to spend to just make sure anytime, anywhere, anyhow, it can be utilized and it's reliable.
Absolutely. If you don't show up when you're asked to do so, then why are you there? Well, I was great 99% of the time. Yeah. Was that 1% that we really needed you though?
Yeah.
And you weren't there. You don't want to be in that position.
No. 5 nines or 6 nines is what it has to be.
100%. Agreed.
I like it, Del. One thing that I wanted to kind of digress to is like leadership, right? You're building a team.
Yeah.
Been involved in leadership positions in your past. What are you doing and what have you learned throughout your career that's shaping how you're building this team today? Because I met, Michelle,
sure.
Yeah. She's an absolute stud. What are you doing to pick the right people in today's market? Because it's very, very competitive.
It's very competitive, very challenging.
Yep. And how are you building a team that is a, for lack of a better term, like you guys are in a startup today, but you are, a newly formed, business, versus some competitors here on the ERCOT market. How are you going after talent, attracting them and building a culture in this business that also keeps the culture that is in VIOTAS today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is a challenging market. I am very fortunate in that I inherited a team of really high caliber and high quality people on the engineering, sales, and market ops side. We are currently growing the team. We're actively interviewing for positions today, and it is super challenging. So finding the right fit isn't just about, a person's background, right, and their education, but also, are they going to be a personality fit? Do they embody what VIOTAS at its core, right, stands for? So VIOTAS corporately and historically has been a very employee-centric company. So we do a lot of outings and fun things as a team, and that's not, well, this is a family. Well, no, it's a work team.
Yep.
Who needs to congeal and work well together.
Yep.
And you have different personalities, you have different people who have different priorities, right? So balancing all that and finding a cohesive group of people to work with is a huge challenge. We have a very, very diverse workforce. It's 110 people, right? So you can imagine, spread across 3 different countries and 3 different continents, right? We have a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and VIOTAS has done a great job of kind of becoming a melting pot of all those individuals and really keeping at the core. A lot of social involvement at the VIOTAS side, whether it's supporting charities or doing community service type work. We do a lot of that. Super proud of that. We were VIOTAS Texas. We made some donations after the terrible floods that we had earlier this year, just supporting local organizations because it was the right thing to do.
Yep.
Right. We didn't talk about it too much, but we did it. Terrible tragedies. And just to give you an idea of the VIOTAS family, actually got emails from counterparts in Australia, in Ireland. Hopefully, everything's okay with your family and extended, and it's just that level of engagement from somebody half a world away.
Yeah.
Right. Seeing that they care. So that's huge for us. From a leadership perspective, I'm in the dirt, right? I'm literally in the trenches with the team, and have always been at that level. I've had the joy and luck in the past 15, 20 years, in leadership, always having quality people as coworkers. And I always call folks coworkers, whether or not they're, down the stack org-wise or not. We're a very flat organization.
Yep.
And even as we grow, we'll probably stay that way just because, one, it's the VIOTAS style, but it's also my style.
Yep.
And I attribute that to my days at Constellation, where, yeah, you might have a boss, but, on the trading floor, and if the trader asks you to do something, you're probably going to do it,
yep.
Right? And it's very flat, and everybody's approachable. I could walk into the CEO's office and say, hey, Mr. Poindexter, we got stuff to do.
Yeah.
And he might not know who I am, but he'd shake his head and say, yes, sir, go ahead and do what you need to do. And having that kind of an open relationship with people is huge. That's not for every organization. Certainly. And not every organization acts that way. But at VIOTAS, it's a very flat organization. There is no hesitation for anybody to pick up the phone and call our CEO, say, hey, Patty, there's something that I think we can do better, or there's something that's not right. And he's going to pick up the phone, or he's going to respond to your text at 4 a.m, or your phone call. And that's huge. And I'm the same way. And some of that is, I worked the trading floor. I ran operations. I've worked at network operations and, energy desk. So I'm used to being on even when I'm not.
Sure.
And it's probably a little bit of an American thing to say too. My phone's on when I'm on vacation.
Yep.
Even though it probably shouldn't be, I'm still there. And it becomes part of who you are, right? You get that invested in wanting the company to do the right thing and to be successful. And I want that for all the people that I work with as well. And part of that is, how do you help them grow? Right? How can they spread their wings? And maybe they want to do something different, and you support them if they want to do that. You've been here for a couple of years and you want to go do something else. Absolutely. You wish them well, and you keep connections and you stay in touch, and you build a relationship. You might not talk to that person anymore every day.
Sure.
But still somebody you could pick up the phone or shoot a note to and say, hey, can I run something by you? Can I have that kind of interaction?
Have that intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super, super fortunate that I've worked with such great people in the past that, I can pick up the phone today and call somebody I haven't talked to in 3 years. And I know that she'll pick up the phone or he'll pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And that's huge, right? Because it says not a lot about just you, because it must mean you're an okay person, but it says a lot about them, right? They still, oh, Dell's calling. Wonder what's going on. I haven't talked to him in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And, we have a lot of joking, you see, a meme here or there or a story. Well, work people, that's not a family. That's work. Well, sure. They're not your blood family. Absolutely. but they're your associates and people that you work with every day, and you have to have their back because they have yours, right?
And you spend more time
And you
with people you work with,
or an equal amount, yeah, or an equal amount,
right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
you better have their back.
100%.
That
100%.
That DNA match is so important, and I think I think Jack Welch talked about a cultural we'll eat strategy for breakfast every single morning, and I think that's true. If you have an identity crisis as an organization with your culture that doesn't align with your team, and that you're not as in a leadership position, just my experience, letting that persist, through the organization, you end up having this tug of war that ends up happening.
Yeah,
and just I love you talk about a flat management organization. I think that hierarchy makes it really difficult.
Does,
especially in fast-moving markets, for people to get things done. Right? Agility, being willing to be bold, stand up, talk, even if they're at, the lowest level in a company, being able to approach somebody in the C-suite or leader in the business.
Good ideas come from everywhere.
1,000%.
Yeah.
That's one thing I personally, embrace, and I love to hear that you've hired folks from different backgrounds, is I really like having a very diverse team from a background, personality perspective, because you go, hey, if I hired somebody from the healthcare industry to come into, our business, people are like, what did you do that to the table? It's like, they can look at a problem differently than we can.
That's right.
And we often, in businesses and folks that have been in this industry, we have blinders because there's preconceived notions. We've done it like this for years.
We've always done it this way.
Yeah. But somebody else comes in and in 2 seconds goes, that's stupid. Why don't we do it this way? And you're like, holy crap, why did I never think about that? But
different perspective.
Perspective.
Absolutely.
It's important.
You have to have that.
You
have to have it to be successful, for sure.
So if folks are interested in learning more about VIOTAS or connecting with you, Del, got a website? Can they do on LinkedIn? I imagine you guys.
So we have both of those things. Yeah. So VIOTAS.com.
Okay. VIOTAS.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
VIOTAS.com. And so you'll probably land on the corporate page, and then there's a drop down. So you pick your country. And of course, we're the great state of Texas in the US of A. So that'll take you there, and they'll tell you more about the services that we offer, a lot of which we talked about here today. Obviously on LinkedIn as well. Super happy that we'll be sponsoring a couple of shows this fall.
Yeah.
We'll be at the Permian Power Conference later this month.
Yep.
And then we'll be at the Daniel Energy Barbecue Bash in November. So we're pretty excited about both of those events, and looking forward to meeting a lot of customers and partners and really catching up with some folks.
Absolutely.
And yeah, from an email perspective, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. If you want to email my entire team, we're very open. It's, Texas@viotas.com, and it comes into my entire team, and I promise you will get a response quickly.
I like it, man. We're going to tag you on LinkedIn. We'll also post this.
Absolutely.
Make sure drop your guys' information, and folks, just from my perspective, the services that VIOTAS is offering are very important in today's market. My perspective, I've talked with a number of folks in the Queasy space, and these guys have a very, very unique way that they're approaching this market, and would encourage you, if you got generation resources, if you're trying to figure out how do I end up monetizing those assets and having a partner that can approach this differently than maybe other people do, should definitely reach out. And Del, I'd love to have you back on.
Oh, absolutely.
Be able to touch on kind of state of the industry. It's always great having different perspectives with us all being in the energy space, right? But we play in different pieces of it, and it's always nice to see how those things interconnect and intertwine together.
Absolutely. I'd love to come out, if nothing else, for the free coffee.
Oh, 1,000%. Absolutely. And look forward to seeing you at the Permian Power Conference and the DEP barbecue.
Absolutely.
If you've never been to the DEP,
I have not.
Oh,
I have.
Something fantastic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have heard some pretty good stories, and it sounds like it's going to be a good time.
John, Bill, Sean, the whole team.
I'm not going to eat
first class
prior to going. I'll just
don't. And then you're going to be done with barbecue after that.
I'll have myself.
Plenty of protein to be had.
Excellent.
And then Permian Power connection, that's something we're going to be at as well from, an Energy Espresso and Pro Power. We're really excited about that conference. I think, it's a first Permian-focused power conference. It's very, very timely.
Yeah, absolutely. Pete's done a great job. Yes, everything else.
He's a good dude. Good dude. So look forward to seeing you there, man. And thank you so much for joining the Energy.
Josh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. So, folks, appreciate you joining and tuning into this episode of the Energy Espresso. Remember, it's people that make energy happen. And don't forget that, we all pretty much start our day with a cup of coffee, but energy is what we use to move the world. And stay tuned for next week's episode. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for
Passing, partner. Appreciate it.